welcome to this episode of the Fearless Millionaire Just Do It show, where we spotlight fellow Fearless Millionaire members that are working on their passion, growing their business and growing their life, trying to live that Fearless Millionaire lifestyle that we all desire and attain for. So I wanted to bring on a very special guest today, someone that I've known for a number of years. I've actually known, and his name is Chris Tracy, and I've known Chris for a number of years. We met actually through a client of mine in the real estate investing industry. And this client of mine, speaks all over the country. It's actually spoken all over the world now that I think about it. A few international speaking gigs as well. And we met through that client in the real estate investing and apartments industry. And we just had this, really great connection. One thing I absolutely love about Chris is that he's a simple guy, but he's very, very funny and witty in his way about, taking difficult or complex problems and really breaking them down. And he's got a really unique way about him and fun delivery, that's for sure. I can tell you this, whenever I'm chatting with Chris, and we've had multiple chats over the years about, whether it was marketing or it was about real estate, we've always had a great time in the process. So I wanted to bring him on the show today because I knew he would be someone that I know from Chris' background, he's had his highs, he's had his lows, and he's been building his empire. And I'll tell you this, that's why I wanted to bring him on the show, is because I've seen Chris over the years grow step by step. He's gone through some hurdles and challenges, but he always got back up. And that's why I thought his story today would be so valuable to share with you. So I want him also to, share his story, but let's get him on here. Chris, thanks so much for being here on the show. I really appreciate you being here today.
Pleasure's all on this end. Nathan, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. I was a little nervous about the weather here today, but it looks like the sun's coming back out because it was just raining and the wind was picking up. But I'm really happy now because it's getting the sun's. You can see the sun's picking back up, so that's great, man. Yeah, over here doing virtual investing, virtual lifestyle, which is our anything we try to achieve in through being a fearless millionaire through that lifestyle we desire. I can't complain, man. I mean, this is it's definitely a unique place for sure. All right, so Chris, we have quite a bit to cover, but I wanted you to kind of open up and tell us a little bit about your story, your background, and some of the highlights about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you brought up that vital point about the lifestyle thing, because that's definitely the place that I was striving to, is to try to get something that would financially take care of me, and it was more passive in nature. And you'll see where I'm going with this whole thing as I tell my story. But basically, my story is I have 15 plus years in the field of human services, working with people with disabilities. So I got into that, in my years while I was going to college, and I just started doing it on the side just to make money to support myself. I thought it was a cool job. I was like, yeah, sounds rewarding. It sounds like a noble thing to do, help people that have different cognitive and physical disabilities and challenges. So after years of doing that, and then I just started to get older and started to have concerns about my financial future and my retirement. And that's the downfall of the field of human services. It just doesn't pay a lot of money. So I was struggling to support myself, even despite the fact that I would work, 40, 50 hours a week. I said, that this is probably not really going to be sufficient down the road. So I started to work on a little bit more of a long-term plan. And I focused more on goals with respect to, a longer term vision, if you will. So I sought out what a lot of people do is they start to explore the field of real estate investing. I heard that it was a cool thing to do, that it was lucrative, you can make money, and there's a variety of different vehicles that you can achieve, different goals and niches, whatever it is you like, whether you like flip houses or I think I've seen different bits of content because I'm obviously on your email list about different things that you've done in the past with respect to investing in land, or there's a multitude of different ways that you can make a dollar in real estate, which always piqued my interest.
Yeah.
But then ultimately what I did is I sought out a mentor, And I established a relationship with a woman by the name of Sue Nelson, and she just needed someone to support her with her various things that she did. I would help her out at her live events. I would help her out with her marketing. I would help her out, with different, just anything under the sun that she needed. She just needed an extra soldier in her army, basically. And she taught me a lot about this thing that she does. It's buying apartment buildings with investor partners is really what it is in a nutshell. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I still learn and practice and do the business today. I still work with her, and I invested in her formal coaching program because that's really what you need, as you're well aware of. If you're trying to do anything in this life, if you try to figure it out and on your own, for the most part, you're just taking your chances, and it's easier if you have a coach or a mentor to help you.
I want to interject here for a second, because it sounds like to me, like, first of all, we have a common connection there. I remember when you told me you worked in human services or, special needs and whatnot. Actually, I remember that was one of the first things that we both connected on, because I was in that industry as well for 3 years, very part-time on the Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a very unique thing. It was about like really giving back to people. And it taught me a lot, actually. It was very unique. But I too had that same realization. I was like, well, I can't do this forever. Well, I mean, I didn't want to do it forever. It wasn't my long-term goal, but it gave me an experience that I really enjoyed. But you bring up something so valuable. Like when you started looking into an industry, you said like, basically you found a mentor, but you didn't just, because this has come up in a few different episodes, where you found a mentor that you didn't just like read their book, you actually engaged them and then you worked with them.
Right.
Like you said, you did everything under the sun. It sounds like to me, one, you have a very like a servant's heart. Like that is so, I remember like, I forgot which is not Vince Lombardi. I forgot the coach, the famous, John Wooden. He always said, make sure your servant's cloth, your servant's towel, that's what it is, your servant's towel is bigger than your ego towel. And it sounds like to me, like you have had that, like that serving attitude with someone who has much more experience. And you actually just, instead of just reading the book of the mentor, you actually like got into the business. Is that right?
That's spot on, 100%, absolutely right. And I did another episode with a gentleman by the name of Joe Fearless. He's in the same arena, ballpark level, if you will, of Sue, my mentor that I just mentioned. And I did a podcast episode. The link is going to be in the show notes. And it will elaborate and expand much more on what you were just talking about how someone can begin the process of seeking out a mentor. Because what I see all the time, it drives me absolutely nuts, is many people, they try to shortcut this concept that we're describing now. They try to take the freeway out, and that's understood. It's times are tough. Things cost money. We don't always have money. In this day and age, the economy's struggling, so on and so forth. So we try to get much of our solutions via, Facebook groups or, blogs, forums, but that can all be very beneficial in the beginning. You can listen to podcasts and read books and participate in Facebook groups, all day long. But when you're talking about buying an apartment building, or even flipping a house for that matter, we're talking about significant financial transactions. Now when you're buying an apartment building, they're often $1 million plus properties. My group that I'm working on, I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. I'll transition more into how my story evolved, and even the business that Sue does. These are $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million buildings. If you just read some books, and if you're going to take your chances and say, okay, well, I'm going to see if I can buy a building that costs $3.5 million. And then if I need support, I'll just go to Bigger Pockets, and then I'll ask people questions. Well, you might be able to get by if you're just going to, try to buy a condo or something like that. I don't know. But even that, condos are, that's a $100,000 transaction, $150,000 transaction. But I just found that it would be kind of really just too risky to try to play this bigger game that I really loved, and just winging it, hoping that someone in a forum or a Facebook group or some other or information I could get from a podcast would help me. I just didn't feel that I could get that specialized knowledge and that support. Right. When I'm in a really complex transaction. So
right.
So I found the coaching and the support.
You get more value.
Priceless.
You would say you get more value out of that one-on-one approach, that mentorship approach.
I don't see how anyone, at least in this business that I do, but geez, even when you're talking about buying land or flipping houses, you're going into uncharted territory most often. A lot of people will try to make it seem like it's easy, but it's really not. There's a multitude of pitfalls that you can fall into, especially if you've never done it before. The support and the hand-holding it's valuable because it just shortens the learning curve significantly. And I work with a gentleman, now he's my formal coach, and the lady that I described previously, Sue, she's the CEO of the whole operation, and I have a one-on-one coach. And what I do is I show up every week to the coaching or every other week to the coaching session with a property that I have done the underwriting on. It's in a piece of software. And my coach, that's pretty much his job, is to identify the pitfalls and then save me from them. Because what you have is, when someone's trying to sell a piece of real estate, the seller and the broker that is representing that seller, the broker's job is to help the seller sell that piece of property, period. Their job is not to help you. In fact, they will throw many curveballs at you and try to get you to buy the property, despite the fact that it may or may not be in your best interest to do so. So when you're talking about $1 million deal, if you screw up, it could be a devastating one, to say the least. And especially when you're working with investor partners, it's other people's money that you're putting at risk. You really have to know exactly what you're doing on a variety of levels.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you a question, Chris, about something that you brought up. About, you said, one, get a mentor, get that one-on-one communication. I'm sure during your time being in that industry, in the real estate investing industry, I want to ask you, what has been in your life, in your business life, what has been your biggest challenge so far?
All right. Yeah. My biggest challenge, I would say, is probably just staying motivated. Like any human being, sometimes energy and motivation can be tough to come by nowadays. It can be priceless, to say the least. I think many of us run off of coffee. See, I have my little smiley mug with some coffee in it, kind of keeps me going. If I can just kind of back up one step and just close out my previous story, because I didn't quite bring us to where we are today. Sure. But it kind of works hand in hand with that question. I stay motivated, and I overcome this challenge. And what I did was I plugged into a group of individuals that I'm actively buying properties with an investment group. It's called the Synergetic Investment Group. I plugged into it, and I used the formula that's in the podcast episode that's going to be in the show notes. It's the Joe Fearless podcast episode. I reached out the same way I did with Sue, and I just said, hey, I want to connect with you guys. I want to link up. Let's buy some properties. Here's what I can bring to the table. Here's the value that I can provide. Right. Because what happens I don't know if you interact in bigger pockets a lot, but a lot of these real estate forums, what you will see is people that, like I mentioned earlier, they're trying to take the cost-effective route, if you will, and they will just say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor, but they're not willing to formally put any skin in the game and invest in one. They just want free help is really what they want. And you will get a lot of free help, but you'll get the iceberg basic questions answered. So what I did is said, well, rather than having the whole thing backwards and saying, hey, I know that you're like a really successful, well-established, an extremely busy individual, to say the least,
Right.
can I meet you for coffee for free, pick your brain, and then go home afterwards? Now, what would you say, Nathan? I mean, if I'm sure you get a lot of people that call you all the time for your professional services.
I,
Hey, Nathan, can I pick your brain for a little while for coffee? You don't have the time or the capacity to do that because you have clients, right?
right.
Yeah.
Chris, I gotta mention, you speak on something that's so powerful. I literally, almost every day, I get probably over 10 messages a week just about this specific thing. Like, hey, I'd love to meet up with you. And I honestly,
Right.
I used to, this is years ago, I used to answer every single one of those questions, like,
Yeah.
hey, how's it going on, and all that. Today, I just send them over to my assistant, and she pre-qualifies the person. And
Right.
the reality is, a lot of those individuals were reaching out because, and I don't want anyone to take me the wrong way here, but here's something that's very important. And
Mm.
Chris, and you discussed this, is it's important to reach out to the mentor, right? It's important to do that. Don't give up on that. Like, pursue those people, right? And people that you look up to and aspire to, you can gain value from, but don't come empty handed, right? Like, and
Yeah,
whether it's,
exactly.
buying them, they got to look at the value for their time, right? And you bring up this, Chris, and it's very important. So you have to think of a way, and Chris, I can see this in how you've done that, is you have to think of a way is, how can I add value to that person's life? Yeah, you may be able to add value to their stomach if you live locally. Today, internationally, or if you're working
Mm.
from one side of the country to the other, you may not be able to do that. But if even if you meet virtually with your mentor or someone that you look up to, and or you want to be around more and be in more communication with, you have to ask yourself something that you did, Chris, is, how can I add more value to this person's life? And you know what? That's so powerful. So, but I have to ask you a very important question, Chris,
Yep.
because I want to say, a lot of the times, some people don't know how to add value. They may think, well, what am I going to do? They already have everything they need. So what would you do? So give us some examples, because you've done this a few times. It's like you're on a pattern
Mm.
of success here. You've gotten in, like you've gotten behind the curtain, per se. So what were some of the things that you said you'd be able to add value to? Or how would you approach
Great.
it?
Great segue. This is perfect because I'm almost done telling my intro story. To answer this question, my answer is going to be applicable to the group I work with now that buys apartment buildings, and how I got started working with Sue. Is someone that, and this is probably even applicable for you as well, someone who is at a high level of success, achievement, money, status, power. They're a millionaire. They're a really, popular marketing expert such as yourself. They're a really well-established real estate investor like Sue, whatever. It's a safe assumption that that particular individual, regardless of the niche, is your biggest need is time, I would say, right? So when you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of money, I went to Sue and just, pretty much assessed and asked her and just tried to figure out, what were her biggest needs. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, she had a small army, and she needed another soldier. She needed another trooper, because she struggled with time. She couldn't do everything that she needed. She needed someone to help her at her events. She was just kind of like a one-woman army.
Right.
So I helped her by investing my time and taking things off of her plate that she needed, because she couldn't do, managing her social media, or helping her with her blog, or editing audio and video, or, assisting her at her live events, many things that were just sapping her time. She needed someone to alleviate that from her. And with my group, that's what I do now. Is there's a similar gentleman that I work with, and he runs the whole group. I plugged into the group and said, okay, well, for this first deal that we bought back in April of this year, I brought to the table, I would do things like just make phone calls. It was kind of a myriad of things that I would bring to the table. It wasn't one thing all the time, but it was just kind of like I was on call and available to do whatever would consume time and whatever was needed. So when we got the property under contract, we would need an attorney. So, it would be like, okay, Chris, find us an attorney that will do the closing. Okay, so now I'm screening and vetting and interviewing attorneys and asking them questions.
But you're adding value, though. You were adding value to that.
Yes.
To that group.
And that's the name of the game is, what can you do? And okay, so now we need insurance for the property. Find us an insurance broker. Okay, so there's a lot of different time consuming things, and then continuously bringing deals and opportunities to the group, investors, calling brokers, bringing different deals that we can underwrite and analyze. So there's a lot of different ways you can get involved. There's a lot of different ways, that you can make money. And it's like you said, just trying to add value. And then this just to close out my intro story, I probably should have narrowed this down a little bit. But I work with an investment group called the Synergetic Investment Group. I got my first deal done, a big buying large apartment building deal done April of this year. We have our second one under contract right now.
Awesome.
I haven't looked back since I started working with this group because they keep me motivated. And so then once you have like accountability partners, people that you can kind of feed off of, there's good days, there's bad days, but we always work through it, and we live to fight another day, each and every day. And we analyze a multitude of deals, weekly. We make a lot of offers. We have one guy in the group that focuses on bringing investors to the table and rounding out the whole syndication process. So being part of an intimate, team that is also highly motivated, helps me with my challenge of staying motivated as well. So just to kind of come full circle with all of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Chris. Did you bring up some powerful points? Like a lot of times, the question was, what do you find to be your biggest challenge? And like you said, sometimes motivation and energy can be the biggest challenge on the day-to-day. It's those little moments where like, you got to find that energy, you got to dig deep inside. But you found a strategy that works so powerfully. It's like mentorship and accountability all at the same time. And by getting into that group, you found people that are part of the same industry, that are part of even maybe the same transaction or the same company. And yet it's an energy that is accountable. It creates accountability as well.
Yep.
And I want to applaud you in a way with one hand.
Yeah.
Here's my virtual high five, because you know what? You've been very fearless. Yeah. You've been very fearless now that I think about it, because look at you. You took the courage to, and I'm sure maybe you can fill me in on this. Maybe you sweated it out a little bit. You're like, oh my God, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to say? But in order to go to the previous client that you were with and the mentor, the apartment mentor, and then now this one, you took the courage and you said, you know what, I'm going to take a step of faith and I'm just going to ask, right? I'm just going to ask. Would you agree? I mean, what would you say about that? I mean, how did it feel before asking?
Yeah, with respect to when I approached Sue or
both.
Yeah.
Both. Like, how did it feel like before you asked, like, hey, how can I add value? Like, what was that?
I'm not going to lie. The process is, and it can be slightly, nerve wracking, when you're just trying to go up a hill and you're at the bottom and you're saying, okay, I got to take this first step. Yes, I am. I feel, because I'm a human, I feel afraid. I feel nervous, that's naturally going to occur. But if you just do everything that we just described, and furthermore, if you implement what is discussed in the podcast episode that's going to be in the show notes of this episode, if you already have a premeditated strategy of, like you mentioned, of giving value, that will alleviate the fear. In my opinion, that's what worked for me, is because the tables are essentially turned before you even pick up the phone, or before you even meet the person for coffee or whatever the case may be. You will naturally acquire confidence, because all you have to do is tell yourself before the person even shows up, you've got it all, you've got the whole thing mapped out where, all right, I'm just going to ideally research or anticipate what this person might need. It's a safe bet that they probably need time, like we mentioned, or so you kind of go in and say, hey, you do some homework on your end, right? And say, hey, Nathan, I've been checking out a lot of your podcast episodes, your Just Do It episodes, your website. I've seen you speak, and I was curious. Do you need any help with X, Y, and Z? Would that help you? How can I make your life easier? Or just if you anticipate any challenges or obstacles or struggles that person might have. Nathan, do you need any help with editing your audio and your video? And then you try to mesh it with your skill set, right? And say, hey, well,
right.
I'm really good at editing audio and video. I can do that for you. And just so that, right? And then you get the person to open up, because you're not trying to squeeze the person and pick their brain, which so many people, like I said, they make this mistake and just say, hey, Nathan, what can you teach me about internet marketing? Where it's just like you just met the person and you're asking them for stuff, like kind of, so the positioning of it is kind of like, hey, I know you don't really know me, but I want you to tell me stuff that you charge a lot of money for. Give it to me right now for a cup of coffee. Will you do that?
Right.
No, like, don't even go there and just be like, hey, Nathan, here's what I can do for you. If you want to teach me some stuff along the way, that's cool. If not, don't worry about it. I'll just try to make your life better than it was before you met me. And we'll talk later down the road,
Yeah. And I want to bring up something there that's very important to what you said. You shift the focus of fear. Like most people, when they're going to go approach their mentor or someone they look up to, someone they're maybe trying to do business with, they have all the focus on themselves about trying to get what they need. And that increases the fear at times. It's like people start getting, self-doubt. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to accept my deal? But you said it so well that if you shift the focus to them and anticipate their needs, like that is just so huge, man. And anticipation of their needs, and you focus your attention on them, all the nerves just go away.
It works like magic. I mean, who's ever watching this video right now, try it. Yeah. Next time you want something from someone, because that's why you're nervous in the first place, right? Is you're like, oh God, I'm afraid that the person might laugh at me, or they might, they might just reject me, be cold and rude and just say no. And then I'll walk away, with my tail between my legs. However, just go in and with passion and enthusiasm and excitement to say, listen, Nathan, I really want to help you grow your consulting business, your marketing business, whatever it is you do, and just don't worry about it. I'm not asking you for anything right now. Just, you don't have to pay me. Let me just see if I can take whatever it is you're doing. Let me see if I can take it up a notch, bring it to the next level, not to be cliche. And the whole thing really starts to expand on itself without you even realizing it, because then the expert that you're talking to, that you want something from, maybe you have to invest 6 months to a year of your time and just come from contribution and help the person, whoever it is you're talking about, you, Sue, the group I'm with now. So then the person sees that and says, wow, this guy is like so different from everybody else, because I'm so used to being in the Bigger Pockets forum or Facebook groups and people asking me for stuff and emailing me and texting me. But this guy is coming out of the blue saying that he's just going to help me. And yeah, it's almost like a no-brainer, especially if you have something that is really valuable to the other person, and say, hey, I'm not going to be another thing for you to worry about, Nathan. I'm not going to be another monkey on your back. I'm not going to be another problem or another nuisance. I don't want anything from you. Just tell me what you need now that we've had this introductory dialogue. Do you need your website redesigned? Do you need help with lead generation? Do you need help with, oh, well, here are my strengths, and I just want to improve your life. And then the other person sees that, and then it just keeps growing, because the other person is so impressed that you're not like everybody else, the whole thing just grows, and then you're both comfortable at that point, and then you can really build up some momentum, and and then the relationship evolves, and it's wonderful.
True, Chris. You know, and I can attest that what you're saying works. It's true. It works. I remember I was 18 years old, and I wanted to get into the securities business. I wanted to be a securities broker, so stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I just had the desire, Chris. That was it. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to get a license. I didn't even know all the stock symbols and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know the details, but I'll never forget what I did, because your principle that you're talking about truly works. This is exactly what I did. I was in my 1989 beat up Toyota Corolla, and I remember driving by this building that said Financial Planning Alternatives on the wall. And when I walked in, I pulled in the parking lot. There was a really nice Mercedes sitting on the outside. I'm like, oh, that must be the owner. And I remember going inside and looking at the wall of the securities that they had. So I knew it was in the right place, stock broker, mutual fund broker. And I asked, and I confirmed it with the receptionist that was there. And I said, is this a brokerage for securities and whatnot? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'd like to speak with the owner. It was a small office. There was only about 4 or 5 employees. And so I sat and I waited inside of the lobby area. I waited, and the owner comes out about 45 minutes later. His name was Mr. Oliveira in Massachusetts, actually. And so he comes out, and we walk into he says, come on in. We walk into his office. Now, this man has never seen me before, and I had never met him before. And he starts off the conversation about 15 minutes talking about himself. That's all he did, Chris. He was just blah, 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 talking about himself, all his achievements, his success. He had a good reputation in the area, because I saw his advertising come up over and over again in the area. And so he just kept talking. So for 15 minutes, he just goes on about himself, doesn't even ask me my name or anything like that. He just goes on and on. Yeah. And then after he was done, he just asked me, he said, so what brings you here today? And I said, well, Mr. Oliveira, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and your background and your experience. And that's actually why I came here today, because of your experience. And he just looked at me. He's like, whoa, you looking to buy stocks or mutual funds and stuff? I said, no, actually, what I came here to do, because of your experience, is I came to volunteer my time. I want to learn from you. I want to learn from you. And he just looked at me. He's like, how old are you? I'll never forget. He said, how old are you?
Well, he's blown away by your thought process. Yeah.
Yeah. And literally I said, well, Mr. Oliveira, I said, I work another 2 jobs, but I'm willing to reduce one of them and, maybe give like 5 to 10 hours a week here. And I want to volunteer my time as long as I can do something here at your office, and you can teach me a little bit about the securities business. And he said to me, well, first of all, he was shocked. He was like, wow. He's like, I've never had anyone do this. He says, but I have just the job for you. He says, show up next, I think it was next Wednesday or something like that. Show up next Wednesday and we'll put you to work. Literally, I showed up on time. This time I was dressed up a little bit more than I initially was for the first meeting. And I showed up. Okay. And I showed up to the meeting, and the first thing they do was they put me on the phone, booking appointment reminders. That's what I did. I called people to remind them about their appointment for him to come into the office. That's what I did. But while I was there, while I was in the office, I was learning things. I was hearing different words, and I was getting some experience. I was in the meetings, the weekly meetings. And anyway, so, Chris, it worked. And I did that a few times over the years in life. And I'm telling you, every time it comes back to you, that law of reciprocity, it comes back to you multifold. And so what you're saying is so true. It really is. It's powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah, buddy.
I wanted to segue from that into someone who is in a position where they want to contact their mentor. They want to reach out. They want to take that step. Give us a few tips here, or maybe even from your experience. How did you do it? Did you meet up for the coffee on your first few meetings? Like, maybe you could share was there a strategy that you had? Did you write things down? Give us some insight to that. Like, how did you do it?
Yeah, I'd say step one, and this is how I did it, and I think this would be helpful for pretty much anyone, really, as you go through your life, is just to be clear on exactly what you want, because what I'm seeing, and this has been a plague, I think, in our world, especially since the internet has evolved with social media, and especially in real estate, many people that are trying to learn, okay, so let's talk about real estate, for example.
Yeah.
If you're trying to learn real estate, you know how this goes. And marketing is the same way. What's one of the biggest things coming at you? The shiny object syndrome, right? There's a new webinar or live event or, home study course or what have you coming at you left and right. If you're just a mortal man or woman walking through our society, it's like you're just bombarded with webinars and just people, and it is what it is. There are other people out there, they have businesses, and they want to they want you as a client or a customer with respect to their services and their information products, their books, live events, masterminds, what have you. So I think that for me, what I did was I just said, okay, step one, this is my passion and this is how I'm going to connect it. I'm going to just put the blinders on, and I'm not going to learn how to flip houses. I'm not going to do single family stuff, although sometimes these different things, because I'm also a real estate agent. I didn't mention that in my intro. But I have family and friends that come to me, like I had a buddy of mine who wanted me to help him sell his condominium. So I did that for him. So I'll do different things like that. But for the most part, staying laser focused and fighting off with all of my willpower to avoid the shiny object syndrome, because you will be tempted to go left, right, do this, do that, and just say, nope, I'm going to focus on buying apartment buildings, specifically these bigger ones, and I'm just going to go down this road and not be distracted, and then say, okay, well, so now that I'm clear on the connection between what I love to do, what my passion is, and what direction I'm going to go specifically, and not keep going, left, right. That's one of my favorite books. Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
He says that's the devil. Yeah, that's the devil's, because people, they're just kind of all over the map and they're not clear on it. It's a fabulous book. I might just read it again for ha-has. But yeah, it's kind of, you just have to make sure you're going straight and saying, okay, well, now that I'm clear on my passion is, okay, who is the one of the leading experts that I can access right now, that I can provide value to, and that I can ultimately learn from. So the most realistic option I had, at the time, was Sue. And I said, okay, because she lives in the same state that I do, so I could I could actually go to her house.
So you found some commonality, like something in common that which is great in building a relationship. It's like you find something that you're both interested in, locality, like where you're located, or maybe similar things of interest. Would you say is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's how it goes. People like to do business with people that that are like them, that they like, that they trust, that they know. Right. And it's like, hey, you're like me, you're a cool dude. It's kind of like me and you, Nathan. Like, we like doing these things because we like talking to each other. And this interview, if we wanted to, we could probably do it for 3 more hours. Like, we could keep going and going and going, because we kind of like vibe off each other, So that was kind of like it organically, just the pieces started to fall into place there. With that, and I hope I answered that question about how it's kind of like, step one is like, okay, meeting a mentor, just, reaching out and, not giving up, being persistent, because many times I've done it on other ventures too, where I would reach out to individuals and they say, oh, well, I can't do it right now, or I'm busy, or whatever. And, not everyone is going to say yes.
Right. That's true. That's true.
You just have to keep going and stay focused. and people will recognize your perseverance and your persistence, and they're testing you. They want to see how bad you want it, because again, just like the shiny object syndrome, there's people coming and going in emails and text messages, and you'll meet all different people throughout the walks of life, and sometimes people want to see who's really serious and who's really in it for the long haul. So and that's a prime strategy right there. Just to if you're trying to buy a property, when you're working with a broker, the broker that hears your name and hears your voice repeatedly, and you're not just kind of like a flash in the pan, one time, because with the shiny object syndrome, most people, they'll do one particular endeavor and then you never hear from them again. They just fall off the map, or they give up, unfortunately. So,
right.
So Sue, I would say, probably concluded in her mind, like, wow, this guy's like highly motivated. He really wants to help me. He really wants to do this thing. And he's not just kind of like fly by night, reaching out to me once and then the person disappears. Like, so I would engage her weekly, again and again and again, and just say,
perseverance.
Hey, what's going on with this? Following up, how can I help you? What's going on here? And I would also bring ideas to the table and say, hey, maybe we should try this with X, Y, and Z. Or so it's constantly, even if she didn't have any idea in her brain about what she needed, I was constantly on the lookout for it. And say, so like I had her back, where it's kind of like, like, hey, you should really start a blog. Like at the time, she didn't have a blog for her website. And I was like, it might be good for your website, for search engine optimization, lead generation. You could get more business, so on and so forth. And always introducing new ideas, because when you're bringing stuff to the table proactively, even if it's, just like, because an idea can obviously be priceless, because you never know what direction it could go in. But, people that are constantly trying to, further your cause, and you don't have to manage it. It's just coming to you. It's that coming from contribution mentality that unfortunately people in this day and age, they're just not taking advantage of it enough. And they probably know, people just probably haven't realized how powerful it really can be,
True. Very true. Yeah. It's about, that law of reciprocity. It's, about giving and you shall receive. And I think a lot of people struggle with the whole, well, how much do I have to give? And for how long do I have to give? And, and I think you said it perfectly about being focused. I mean, that is truly like the question, me asking you, how would someone get started in this? And you said it perfectly when you said you have to have the vision. You have to know like your 10-year game. You have to know where you want to be in 10 years, because you don't just want to like do this with just anyone. If you can see yourself in that, or maybe you see yourself in that industry, or you see yourself like, hey, I want to be around this kind of environment, or I want to be in this industry for quite some time, then you would start pursuing those mentors that are already in that industry. And yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off, but not only that, but I committed to it, which is pretty much what I mean, like not being fly by night, not giving up, not being distracted. But see, with my industry, the buying apartment buildings, and I would guess probably it's similar for any endeavor, is buying large apartment buildings, these commercial apartment buildings, these larger ones, $1 million plus buildings, is the transactions are fewer and far between than residential. Like if you flip houses, you can flip a house like every couple of months, right? Like
right.
You do multiple transactions per year. This year with my group, we're in the process of having 2 completed. We have the second deal under contract right now, and and we're scheduled to close on it in December. So if you can do 2 really large deals in a year, then you're doing really well. So you just have to be at peace with that and understand that, and just be patient and say, okay, it's a different game, and you just have to commit to it, not give up, and just be realistic with what it is you're doing, and again ward off that impulse of that instant gratification and that need to say, I want to buy a $3 million building in 6 weeks. Okay, it could have happened, sure, Most likely will it? Probably not. Maybe more like 6 months.
Right.
But you have to be in it for the long haul, not give up, and just keep fighting.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is being committed. That's a huge thing. And I think what can happen a lot of times to people is they'll get started in something. Maybe they think there's only like interest, and it can get them excited, but the only thing that's really going to take them is knowing, again, that vision, if this is where they see themselves in 5 years and 10 years, because then they can say, hey, if as long as your vision is clear and and you're focused, any other thing that's coming through, any type of distraction it'll disappear. You'll know when to say no.
Yep.
You will know when to say no, because you'll be like, hey, this is not what I'm looking for. This is not on my path. It's like you mentioned investing in real estate. It's like when I'm investing in real estate, if someone was to bring me a self-storage unit, a complex, I would say, no, I'm not interested in self-storage, because I'm currently not buying self-storage units, right? But if it was within my strategy, then I would say, okay, great, this is within my strategy, then I'm going to take a look at it.
Your criteria.
Again, criteria, right? Knowing what the vision is and knowing what you're going for. Super, super important. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Chris. Very, very powerful. So Chris, I want you to wrap up this episode by sharing some words of wisdom for someone who may be just getting started, who's never contacted a mentor before. I can see that's like the underlining thing here of contacting mentor. What advice would you give to someone in the group here who has never reached out to a mentor but wants to? What advice would you give them?
I would say step one is just to kind of summarize and include everything that we just got done talking about. I would say step one, lay that foundation with your mind about what's a really good way to combat the fear about that. Okay, so you've anticipated and you're proactive with you're going to give value, which ultimately will minimize how nervous you are. And then, so everything we talked about, I would lay that foundation, say, okay, so in your brain, when you got that person on the phone or a Skype call, Zoom chat, or you're going to meet them in face-to-face for coffee, you've already got your game plan, and your mentality is rock solid. So when it's time to talk to that person and see them, you're going to go in there and you're going to make that first impression right out of the gate, which through your communications and everything that the person will perceive of you, that you're not a mooch, leech, greedy savage, or just another tire kicker that they've experienced 1,000 times on the internet and social media. So that way the person will be like, wow, this person is different. They are awesome. I like them. It's cool. I'd like to talk to them again. And they can probably be a valuable asset to me. So the guru, the expert, the mentor that you're trying to seek out, they conclude that you will ultimately be a valuable asset to their world. And at this point in time, it's a no-brainer for them to accept you into their life, because it doesn't cost them anything. You're not going to be a pain in the butt, and you will. Yeah, that's it. Long story short, you're
not mooching off them. You said it best, man. You're not mooching off them. They don't just feel like no one in the world feels like it just to get taken advantage of, right? No one feels good about that feeling, like someone's just going to come into my circle and take from me. Right? Nobody likes to feel that way. Nobody wants that in their life. Otherwise, you're considered a thief, right?
Yeah.
Take from me, no added value. So
what's funny?
I
apologize for cutting you off, but it's relevant. There was a gentleman working in Sue's office a couple of years ago, but he went on to do something else. And when I was in this process, one of the mistakes that I made at the time, because I didn't have you and I to tell me differently, where I just kind of did what everybody else was doing at that time. I said to this guy, I said, hey, I really want to meet Sue. I want to talk to her. He was the office manager at the time.
Sure.
And I said, hey, can I meet this lady for coffee so I can pick her brain? I use those words and the guy was like, no, do not say that by any stretch of the imagination. Don't say that you just want to pick her brain, because that was her business. That was her profession. She offered coaching services. and they were very expensive coaching services, very valuable coaching services. So unbeknownst to me, I was going to go right into a trap and destroy the whole relationship with being naive and not knowing what to say. I had no plan, I had no strategy. I would have totally blown up the whole thing right in my face. And she would have been like, okay, here's another guy that's just trying to mooch off of me and pick my brain and get information that I sell. This guy's trying to get it for free. So that would have been an absolute disaster when I'm just trying to get to know someone to go that route. So if you do everything that we said, it's 180 degrees opposite. And the outcome would obviously been significant. So if you would not have told me that at that time and said, listen, avoid, do not use those words. Do not tell a potential mentor that you just want to meet them so you can pick their brain. Well, people say that. They'll be like, hey, can we talk for a little while, Nathan, so I can pick your brain?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So that would be step one. Avoid that.
Yep.
I apologize for cutting you off, but I want to answer your question. Okay. So once you have that whole foundation laid, just like a house, you need a solid foundation with concrete so you can build on it. And you've got your focus all good to go. You're ready. Then it's just a question of, and just assessing and evaluating what specific value are you going to provide to that person. You've researched it and figured it out, or you've anticipated it in some way, shape, or form. And even if you're off the mark and you could be flat wrong and say, hey, I was thinking maybe you need help with your website, Nathan. And then you say, no, I love my website. It's perfect the way it is. It converts, like crazy. Awesome. Okay, I'm way off the mark. But the fact that I even suggested that was like, okay, you think, wow, I actually did my homework and I looked at your website. I took the time out without you asking me to do that. And I said, it's the thought process that I have, and it builds the relationship. So just kind of assessing and evaluating and matching up your strengths and your skill sets, and just seeing how you can offer them to the mentor that you want to potentially learn from, and just trying to make a good fit there. And worst case scenario, even if you're not a website developer or an expert in anything at all, just your attitude and your mentality and your thought process and
your willingness to help,
your desire to do everything that we just said, and say, I will give you 10 hours a week of my time, and I will be at your beck and call and your disposal, or more, maybe 15, 20, whatever it is. And you're just trying to constantly bring the relationship to the next level, because that's really all you want to do, right? You just want to get to know this person, build a relationship, establish a really good rapport, get your foot in the door. And you want to go from the world that you live in, and you want to enter their world because you've seen it. They're the mentor, they're the guru, they're the consultant, they're the expert, they're the coach. You want to be like them. You want to do what they're doing so you can be successful like them. So you just want to be a part of their inner circle. That's really all you're trying to accomplish. Okay, do you have to make money and pay the bills? Obviously, who doesn't, right? But that will come in time. Okay, so you have to pay your dues. And you got to get your foot in the door, and anything worth having, you got to work for it and kind of, stay at it and kind of, pay your dues just like anyone else does. And kind of over time, it will come. So I think that strategy, that roadmap, that thought process that you implement, you'll be, head and shoulder and miles above many people in this world that totally make the same mistake that I almost made. Of doing, a day in and day out, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve, that recipe right there is that's the blueprint.
Well, I think you said it best when you were going to approach Sue at the time, and you had someone to say, no, don't do that. And I think that's what's so valuable about this interview right here. If someone takes the advice that you've given them in this episode here and applies it, guess what? You've just saved. I know the value that you brought even to this interview with the experiences that you had. It's going to help a lot of people. I already know, because I think this is one of the common things. It's one of those common mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're starting their businesses or they're looking for mentors. They try to just mooch or gleam, and they're not thinking about that other person, right?
Boom.
And I know
Yeah.
you gave some, that's awesome. What you've shared today is so powerful and true.
Yeah. And I
So
can even,
thank you so
I can
much
just,
for
I can close that thought out right there and just
Right.
encapsulate it. So build that foundation and then learn as much as you can, get that specialized knowledge, avoid the distractions. Yeah, so step 2 is, okay, so now you got your foot in the door. Now just soak up as much as you can like a sponge, okay?
Right.
Without being a mooch, but just whatever
Yeah.
you can organically get and just take in. Like what you said when you were talking to that gentleman about the stock brokering or whatever it is. Like you're like, hey, listen, I just want to come in, and you put your cards on the table and you're transparent. You're saying, I want to help you so I can learn. You don't have to pay me what I want to get out of it. Learn,
Exactly.
Get support. At some point, you get that help, get that support. I have a coach. That's my support. I chose and I saw the value in it because of what I want to do. It's a wise move to have someone that can actually hold your hand because of the nature of it. Like I said, they're higher dollar transactions. Take the action, right? So you got the foundation, your thought process is straight, your mentality, everything. You've alleviated the fear and the nervousness and the anxiety of, oh God, how do I work with a mentor? You get your foot in the door, you learn, and then you get help and support along the way in some capacity. You take that action continuously. And I would say the moral of the story with much of this is to not be afraid to invest in that specialized knowledge, i.e., don't be a mooch. Don't think that you're just going to take the cheap way out with Facebook groups and forums and stuff like that. Is that great in the beginning? Podcasts, videos, YouTube. There's a plethora of free information out there. People don't need information. We've got all the information. We've got information coming out of our ears.
Very true.
Yeah, you need the specialized knowledge, and you need that support, that helping hand along the way for whatever it is you're trying to do. And don't be afraid of investing in it, because it's an investment and it's priceless. It really is. And that ultimately too will combat the fear that we talked about, because if you know that you have, my coach, Alan, it's like, I know that Alan and Sue and even this group, ultimately because I set the stage for it, I know that I have them in my corner, so I'm not afraid of anything at all.
Right.
I'll talk to a as soon as I get off of this call and be like, hey, I'm looking to buy a building that costs $15 million. Like, are you kidding me? $15 million? Like, if you would have told me 5 or 10 years ago that I would be looking to buy a $15 million building, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. I was like, how the heck am I going to do that? But this is how you do it: is you get these people in your corner that will support you. If you have to invest in a coaching program, do it. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Assuming you get all these fundamental things that we've discussed, you get them in place. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on college courses, chemistry, physics, algebra, anatomy. And, none of those courses taught me how to build wealth at all. And now I have to pay back student loans. Okay. So what did that do me? $50,000, $75,000 to different universities, okay, great. I have a college degree, but you got to think about it,
So true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Wow. Chris, thank you so much for sharing what you have and what you've experienced, what you've gone through, your secrets to your strategy that you made mistakes along the way, but you also tweaked your strategy along the way too. Thank you so much. I know it's going to be so valuable to the people that hear this and take action on it and implement it in their life. So first of all, I just want to appreciate your time and sharing that with us. And sharing it with the Fearless Millionaires that are listening to this. And also, I want to direct to anyone who's watching or who's learned something from this to support Chris as well. I know he's a humble guy, but I got to tell you, Chris is also an author. And I'm actually going to put the links that he talked about in the show notes. But he's also an author of a new book that just came out. And I bought it. I read it. It's really good. If you like real estate, any kind of real estate, I highly recommend it. But he talks about apartments. So I'll put the link to that in the description in the show notes. And go check out his book, get his book, read it. It's a really great read. And you'll learn a bunch of things as well, even if you never even thought about real estate, or if you have considered it but don't know how to get started. So check out that book as well. And and support Chris. You know what I mean is give some comments, what your thoughts are in the comments below. Give this a like, and also share it with someone that you know that could gain from it as well. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for sharing your value and tips with the group.
Nathan, thank you, man. I'm just beyond thrilled to be on this platform. You know, every time I talk to you on, you know, on video chat or different interviews, you know, it's just like this. It's really, you know, just exhilarating to say the least, you know, and just, yeah, I'm eternally grateful for you and all that you've helped me over the years. You know, a lot of the stuff, just, you know, on a side note, you know, when you started working with my friends too that I described, and you brought your marketing consulting expertise to the table, and you know, that's how we met. You know, I've learned, you know, a massive amount from you, and you're definitely one of the founding fathers of people that taught me about sales funnels, you know, different like strategies, you know, just anything marketing under the sun, you know, sales stuff. I remember numerous calls that we've had, you know, where you've helped me with, you know, sales scripts, you know, different things, you know, to say to people. Just, I mean, you name it. I'm probably leaving a lot of stuff out, but you know, just a side testimonial of my appreciation for what you've done for me over the years too. So, yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember that when you go out and you pursue these things that Chris has talked about, and you pursue mentors in your life, and you go out there and make the connections, just remember to have that destination as the long-term vision, and remain strong every day. Take it one step at a time, day by day. And as you continue on this journey, you will eventually get there, and your goals and dreams will become a reality. I'm so excited for you. Again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk real soon. See you.